Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of Conversations with T. This is T speaking, and we're back with JJ, who was my guest on the third episode. Have you been?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm all right, alhamdulillah. It's quite late, but yeah.
Yeah.
So for today's episode, I want to discuss a certain topic with you, which I think is really I think this is something which we need to talk about because it's so, I would say, it's rampant in our society.
Yeah.
So why don't
Yes.
we begin with toxic parents?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Like, you got cut off.
Oh, sorry. So
Yeah.
why don't we begin by talking about toxic parents? In
Yes.
your opinion, what exactly makes a mom or a dad toxic?
I think that's just me, obviously, like it's subjective or I might be totally wrong, but like according to me, I feel like a parent can become toxic when because you're a parent, right? Like your job is to be a parent to your child or children.
Yeah,
But when you start thinking of like when you start prioritizing society more than the well-being of your kids, that's when you start becoming a toxic parent without even realizing it. Like, like in our culture, this is like a common thing, like, oh, what will society say?
oh, that is
Like
so.
when that becomes, yes, when that becomes like your go-to dialogue, that's like the first step of becoming a toxic parent.
This is
Like,
something.
but that's just according to me.
I mean, I think being a toxic parent is more than prioritizing society over your child. I would say it also has to do with having power or control over your kids, if that makes sense.
Yes, like when you don't think of your kids as like, when you don't understand that just because they're kids doesn't mean they're not a human being on their own. Like they're their own person. They have their own personality and
Exactly.
preferences. And if you can't understand or respect that, that's toxic.
Yeah, and being a parent, just because someone gave birth to a boy or a girl and raised that kid for a long time does not that's not a that doesn't give you the green light to abuse, humiliate, belittle, or degrade uh, that other human being, right?
Exactly. Like, but just because you're a parent or because you're a few years older than another person, like you can't go on a power trip. Like, oh, I gave birth to you, so I have the right to belittle you. Like, I understand that when you give birth to a child, you like it's your responsibility to raise them and like, teach them right from wrong and how to be safe. But you need to know that when to let go of their hand, when you have to let them learn on their own.
Yeah,
Like if you still like if you want to hold on to that power, like I think I read it somewhere a few days ago that there are some family members who or like parents who only love you till the point they can control you. Like after like so that is like toxicity. Like you can't be thinking that, oh, I'm a parent, so I hold all the power. It's not a power dynamic between parents and kids. That's not how it's supposed to be.
and I and there are some parents who I feel are so entitled, and they just think that they're never wrong, and like even if they do something, even if they make a mistake or something, they just blame it on the kid, and they
Exactly.
justify their wrongdoing. And like when the kid confronts them or asks them why they did such and such, why they're treating them in a certain way, they like I think some of them would start playing victim.
Exactly. They start gaslighting their own kids.
Yeah, and
Yes. Like
Yeah, go on.
Like a minor example would be like, you know how there's a running joke that, oh, if we as a kid break a glass, then it's like the end of the world for us. But then if the mother breaks a glass, like no one says anything. See, like that's like, yeah, that's a silly example, but that's just like goes to show that the double standards exist even in the most like minor aspect.
Hmm. And I feel so, yeah, like you mentioned earlier, this is an actual problem in our society. I've like people have come to me and complained about like problems they have with their parents. Like they just had really bad relations with them and like their parents were abusive or they just didn't want to understand things from their perspectives.
Yes. Like, see, like not being able to understand that their kid has grown up enough to have their own thoughts and preferences, like not being able to understand or respect that. Like Bengali parents, or I would say Southeast Asian parents, have an extra hard time understanding that concept.
I actually I've been thinking about this for quite some time, and I actually want to know how this became so normal in our culture and society. And like, why has abuse and belittling your own kids? Why have
Like why is it so normalized?
exactly?
How?
That's what I want to know. I want to know the root cause of all this.
I know, like I was having the same conversation with another friend of mine that who came up with this set of rules that just because I was born a few years before you were, I have the right to belittle you, bully you, and I can say whatever to you and I can get away with it.
And let's now. I mean, just think about the kids, dude. I mean, like they reach a point until they've had enough and they start rebelling and they start doing things which they shouldn't and they end up causing more damage to themselves. I mean, yes, they
Exactly.
did make bad choices, but part of that blame goes to their parents for being.
Yeah, like when kids grow up into adult, right? Like there are so many different possibilities, like what kind of a person someone would become. Like someone might be like, oh yeah, they grew up just fine, they get good grades, they have like a proper job, but they might have deep rooted self-esteem issues that
Yeah,
even they themselves aren't aware of, right?
yeah,
And someone might grow up to be like this detached person who's unable to form any healthy emotional attachments in their lives. Like
yeah.
you don't really know what's gonna happen. Like the self-esteem thing is something I can personally speak for, like I can say it from my experience. Like I know obviously my family didn't mean to give me self-esteem issues. Like I'm sure no one wants to do that to their kids, right? But
Unless
it's just that it's been
unless they're crazy.
yeah, of course. Like, so like and it's so normalized to like insult. Like I was actually talking to my cousin, she's 13 years old,
Yeah.
and she was complaining how her mother always like she wakes up and her mother is like, oh, like look at your face. Oh my God, why are there pimples? Why are your eyes so puffy? Why this? Why that? And I could remember like this is exactly what I used to go through. Like I would wake up and like they would make a comment on why this is wrong, why this is like I know they did it without thinking what would be the consequences, but then I did grow up with a little bit of self-esteem issues that maybe I'm not pretty enough, maybe I'm not smart enough, maybe I'm not good enough. But it took like the only reason that I was able to get over it is because I had the privilege to actually go abroad, study, like communicate with different groups of people and like, gain that knowledge to actually understand what happened to me and get over it. But not everyone would be as lucky as me.
Hmm. I I Yeah, I just want to add that some parents they should really be mindful of the things they say and do because I mean some of the comments that they make they're just so unnecessary. Like
Exactly.
I can't okay, I can't think of an example, but you get what I mean, right?
Yes, of course. Like I was having this conversation as well with my maternal aunt. Like
Yeah,
I was telling her just because some things are normalized doesn't mean it's okay.
exactly. Yeah,
Like, because I was telling her, I was like, just because it's normalized for you to say that to your kid doesn't mean it's okay.
yeah, exactly.
Like, it's not.
I feel as though this is, I mean, putting the parents aside, I think this is a huge problem in our society in particular. People, I mean, they gossip and judge so much. It's so annoying. It's so draining.
It really is. And like, like judge on things that actually matters, that might actually have like a positive outcome. Like judging on stuff like, oh, who's fair, who's fat, who's short, who has pimples, like what that has no consequences in the real world.
I mean, why does it bother some people that, I don't know, a person didn't buy her wedding dress from Sabyasachi or whatever, right?
Oh, I know, right? Like these days, I feel like people get married just to show how much money they have.
Oh yeah, we did touch upon this in the last episode.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was because I'm just gonna say it openly, like that my parents are like looking for like they want me to get married and everything, right? So I
Oh yeah,
remember when I was like, yeah, I remember when I was like an 18-year-old, or like let's say even when I was 21-year-old, I would dream that, oh, this is the kind of function I want, this is the kind of wedding I want this lehenga, I want like a sangeet and whatnot, because I was a naive 21-year-old.
mhm.
But now that I'm 25 and I have met my fair share of people here, I always say one thing. I do not want anything fancy. I do not like it. I just want a good husband and a peaceful life. That's
Inshallah.
it. I do not, thank you. I do not want to bring my child in a world that is so chaotic that it's all about Sabyasachi sari and who's beautiful and who's not and who's rich and who's richer than the other person. Like that's never gonna get you any peace in your life. It's just like it's like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I would like to add that people here, they just prioritize, they got their priorities wrong. Like they're focusing
Yes.
so much on very mundane things, whereas there are other issues which really need our attention, such as the healthcare system in our country sucks. I'm sorry to say, but it's the truth. And
Yes.
and like Dhaka is so polluted, and it's
Like no one talks about the things that's actually important.
exactly. And the education system needs to improve as well. And um, from from what I've heard, I guess um, yeah, I mean, sorry, from what I've seen and
No,
heard,
no, it's fine. Yeah.
from what I've seen and heard, the not only is the not only does the education system need improvement, but even the students themselves, like they don't know how to be students in actuality. They just
Yes,
they're
yes.
very robotic. Go.
Because like in our country, everyone's all about like, oh, you need to have like all A's and A stars, all that stuff. So everyone's more focused on just memorizing and then throwing it up on the exam paper. And then
Yeah,
they get their 4 A stars and whatnot, but they don't actually learn how to actually learn what you're studying.
yeah. Our education, the education system here is missing out on very important things, like things that actually matter in real life, such as
Yeah,
mental health, taking good care of yourself, having a successful marriage, having a good
yeah,
relationship with family, and yeah,
yes.
we're not
Like
talking.
no one,
Yeah, go on. Yeah, go
yeah,
on.
no one teaches you about the importance. Like, when you're growing up, there's so many things that you don't know. Like, no one focuses on the mental health aspect of kids when they're like, in the, I don't know, first grade or second grade. Because you're a kid, you don't really understand anything, but they're just like so much pressure is put on those kids that, oh, you need to study and get like 100 out of 100. Like, oh, like, that auntie's son got full marks, why not you? Like that competitiveness. Like, I hate competition. I'm just gonna say it. I absolutely hate competitions and comparison. Like, no one is same. You can't compare kid A to kid B. Like, you just can't. And that also like has a negative effect in the sense that, we don't we don't learn how to make friends. We learn how to compete.
Hmm.
Like that's why those kids grow up to be an adult, and then they start the whole they continue the comparison cycle,
The cycle just
with their kids. Yes, it's a vicious cycle.
uh,
Yeah, that is what I hate when it comes to education, like comparing your kids' grades to another kid.
and in our country, like students, the majority of them, they're not taught how to think outside the box. They're just given textbooks and they just read,
Yes.
memorize what they have to, and then just jot them down on their exam papers. That's it.
Yes.
That's unfortunately what education has come
And
down.
it's not just limited to school and high school, like even in university level, the same things happen.
Hmm.
Like, that's what's sad. Like that's just how it goes on for the whole educational period of someone's life. But
Hmm.
I do sense some changes coming. Like maybe not soon, maybe it's not gonna happen fast, but I do think the changes are gonna come when it comes to the educational system.
Hmm.
But then, like, if we go back to the whole parenting thing, like, that is somewhere I don't have hope. I really don't know how this toxic parent cycle is gonna end.
Yeah, schools here should really teach students how to be good parents and how to actually raise a like functional family.
Like,
That's so important.
no one can, like, I feel like you can't teach someone how to be a good parent, but the key to becoming a good parent is to being a good human being yourself.
Hmm.
But then, like, when you're raised by dysfunctional parents or toxic parents, that's all you know, that's all you learn.
Yeah,
So you think that's normalized, but
yeah,
that's an excuse that can be used till like the generation of our parents. But when we become parents, we can't use that excuse
exactly.
because we grew up in a more communicative open world. Like we had the privilege of getting more knowledge, so we can't become the toxic parents that we hate so much.
It'd be really unfortunate if we do, wouldn't it?
I do know that some might, like some people might, because it's hard to break the generational cycle. Like, and there's always gonna be like, not everyone's gonna be perfect. There's always gonna be like outliers and everything. But I really hope that people can change, but I can't speak for sure.
And
Like, I can only hope that's
I just, yeah, I just remembered something, and this is something which I did mention to you previously before I started recording this episode. Like kids who were exposed to so much toxicity, abuse, or neglect from their families, like they reach a certain, they eventually reach a point where they just want to leave. They just want to get out of this
yes.
country and just not come back. And I think that's very
Yes, and
heartbreaking. Like,
yeah, it is very heartbreaking. Like, because you were born in this country, you were raised here. Like, no matter how toxic it is, like, I do love my country, but then if it becomes so toxic that I can't even live here, like, that's heartbreaking.
yeah, I mean they do love their parents and they do want to better their relationship with them, but they can't handle that mental pressure anymore. They just want to leave. They just want peace.
Yeah, and I think they shouldn't have to handle that pressure. Like, that's just not fair.
Hmm.
Like if like I understand that not everyone has the privilege to get out of the country and escape this toxic lifestyle.
Yeah.
But then I do hope that anyone who feels too pressurized by this, that they do get to escape this.
I mean, all I'm gonna say is that it's very unfortunate.
It is actually unfortunate. Like even if you look into the privileged kids who were born into like money and they had all the luxuries in the world, you know,
They,
like whatever.
even they have
Like
problems. Even they have.
exactly. But see, they have another extra set of problems. That is, if they try to complain that, oh, like I'm not loved by my parents, like just because your parents buy you expensive things doesn't mean that that kid feels loved, you know, because at the end of the day, what matters is authentic,
Yeah.
like when you show it in an authentic way, not in a materialistic way. But then those kids get brushed off. They're like, oh, you're rich. What tragedy do you have? You have a roof over your head. You go to these fancy places. Like, oh, you can't be sad. And that is just like heartbreaking for me. Like everyone's story matters, like whether you're rich or poor. Like you have your own set of griefs. Like you can't just brush it off just because someone's rich.
I feel so kids who come from rich families, like people
Yeah.
who just look at them and say, "Oh, you got it so easy.
Yes.
You're so well off, and you have such a perfect life. And what do you need to work?
Yeah.
You have like your parents are rich. You can get whatever you want
Yeah.
behind closed doors. Like it's a
You don't know what happens. Yeah.
yeah. Like for all we know, this kid could be a like this
Physically abused or even emotionally abused. Like you
exactly.
don't know. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like I feel like I came up with this line today. I was like, you know, the generational gap we talk about, like our parents and us. The
Yeah.
difference is that like the generation of our parents, they have a sense of entitlement and lack of empathy. And we as a generation, like I feel like we are more like we have more empathy. Like that's the gap.
I think it's because we've become more aware about mental health and personality
Yes.
and whatnot than our parents did, perhaps.
Yes. Like I am not bashing parents or their generation. I understand that they grew up in a different time under different circumstances. But like we are trying our best to survive. That's it. Yeah.
All right. I think I'm gonna call it a day. Thank you so much, JJ,
Right.
for being my guest speaker for today's episode. And I hope we have a great evening. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.